Honey, I inquired, are you asleep? Amy murmured something I couldn't make out. Can I ask you something? How come after almost 25 years together you've suddenly gotten better in bed? Barely awake, Amy grumbled. I've always done it for you. I observed Amy. She seemed relaxed, curled up in a fetal position, hugging her extra pillow with her back facing me. Yeah, you have, but you never seem to enjoy it. What's with the sudden change? Amy turned over, still clutching the pillow tightly. She flashed me a smile with her beautiful blue eyes and said playfully, Well, I didn't hear any complaints from you. I smiled back at Amy, my closest friend and the woman I've admired since we met at a backyard party over 20 years ago. I'm not complaining now. I'm just curious why, after letting me do it in your mouth twice before we got married and then never allowing it again, you've let it happen twice more in 1 week after 25 years. Amy was fully awake now and asked, What's bothering you, Chris? I'm just asking a simple question, Amy. For 25 years, you've done this without much enthusiasm. It's always felt like a chore. Amy sat up in bed as I continued, and tonight you did something completely different. I'm just wondering where this sudden enthusiasm is coming from. Amy got out of bed and stood with her hands on her hips, glaring at me. If you prefer, we can go back to the old way. Amy was angry, and I sensed she was about to get even angrier. No, I'm really enjoying your improved skills, I said. Then I wanted to get a dig in, so I added, You're almost as good as some of my old college girlfriends. Amy's face turned red with anger, but before she could respond, I continued. But you still haven't explained why your skills have gotten better. Did you read something? Talk to your friends? Or maybe you've had some practice? What are you accusing me of? Amy was furious. I stayed calm and explained, I'm not accusing you of anything. I just want to understand. You've disliked giving me BJs throughout our relationship and suddenly it's become enjoyable. I'm curious why. Amy grabbed her pillow and headed for the door. As she left the bedroom, she yelled angrily, You don't need to think about it anymore because I won't do it again. Amy was halfway down the hall, heading to our guest room, when I called out from the bedroom, I guess I'll find out the truth tomorrow. What do you mean by that? She shot back. I mean, I said slowly, the private investigator I hired almost 6 weeks ago has finished his report. I'm meeting him in the morning. I have a feeling that your newfound skills will be a big part of that report. As I closed and locked the bedroom door, I saw Amy's jaw drop. Her knocking, crying, and pleading continued for over an hour while I lay in our king-size bed, crying into my pillow. Amy and I usually wake up early. Since I didn't want to talk to her, I set my alarm for 3 in the morning. I quickly got dressed in gym clothes and left the house within 5 minutes. My workout that morning lasted 2 hours and left me feeling exhausted. After showering, I changed into clothes that I had packed in my car the day before. I arrived at my favorite breakfast diner just before 6. It was only 2 blocks from my office. After ordering coffee, I turned on my phone and was immediately bombarded with texts and voicemails from my cheating wife. I ignored them and sent a text to my boss, asking if we could meet at Lucy's before work. About 30 minutes later, I received a response from Stacy saying, See you at 7:30. Stacy walked into Lucy's, glanced around, and then sat down on the bench across from me when she spotted me. She ordered a coffee and a bagel to go before turning her attention to me. After taking a quick look at me, Stacy exclaimed, You look terrible. Yeah, I feel even worse, I replied. Is there something going on at work? She asked. I shook my head and I could see Stacy relax a bit as she finished her question. No, it's personal. I think Amy might be cheating on me. She practically admitted it last night. I've hired a private investigator, and I'm meeting him this morning to get the details. I just wanted to let you know that I might be in and out of the office as I deal with this situation. Stacy sat quietly for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Finally, she asked, How can I support you? Unless you have a magic solution, I'm not sure there's much you can do. I'll be taking the next couple of days off, but staying in touch with the office. I'll avoid Amy for now. I have a meeting with the private investigator today, and a lawyer tomorrow, I explained with a shrug. Don't you think you're getting ahead of yourself? Unless there's something you're not telling me, you haven't found any proof yet. I purposely started a fight about closeness last night. Amy got angry right away and stormed out of the bedroom. I told her she didn't have to answer my questions. My private investigator would handle it in the morning. If you had seen the look on Amy's face, you'd be absolutely certain about what the report will say. You should talk to her, Chris. I know I will, but not right now. Where are you going to stay? Stacy inquired. I'll book a room somewhere. Stacy rummaged through her oversized purse and eventually pulled out a set of keys. Handing me one of the keys, she said, Here's a key to our cottage. You've stayed there before. It's only a 35-minute drive away. We won't be using it until the end of the month. As she gave me the key, she offered some advice. Can I give you some advice? Of course. If things go the way you expect, your life will get worse before it gets better. It'll be tough for a while. Then one day you'll wake up and you won't feel completely terrible. You'll just feel miserable. That'll be the beginning of your recovery. It sounds like you're speaking from experience. My ex-husband divorced me 12 years ago. It was rough. We sipped our coffee and Stacy continued. I don't talk about it much, mostly because I'm embarrassed. I messed up my life, my kid's life, and Tom's life. His family hates me. My son's friends hit on me because they know everything. I jumped in. You don't need to share all this with me, Stacy. I know. Even after 2 years of therapy sessions every week, I still have more questions about my stupid actions than answers. We both chuckled sadly. Stacy went on. Tom discovered my cheating in the worst way possible. He tested positive for an STD. I gave my husband and closest friend a disease. I was speechless, so she continued. It gets worse if that's even possible. I panicked and blamed Tom, saying he gave me the disease. We both knew, well, everyone knew, I was the one who cheated. Or why did you do it? Stacy stared at the table as she confessed. Because I could. Because I wanted to feel attractive again. Because I wanted a secret. Because I enjoyed forbidden, anonymous, rough closeness, she elaborated. I travel for work just like you do. Once or twice a year, I'd meet someone interesting and invite them to my room. Looking back, it seemed so foolish. We sat in silence until Stacy asked, Have you ever been unfaithful? No. Honestly, I've never felt tempted. Don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I enjoy flirting and knowing that women find me attractive, but I've never thought about betraying Amy. Why do you think that is? It's just who I am. Closeness with Amy has been pretty ordinary. She's not into trying new things. But even a regular night with Amy is always better than the wildest one-night stand from college. What made you suspicious? Amy and I have always had an active bed life. Even after 25 years, we're close 2 or 3 times a week. Lately, Amy's been a bit more forward, a bit more daring, a bit more. I shrugged again. After a couple of months with a growing knot in my stomach, I hired a private investigator. I'll find out the results soon. I bet Amy will call the office looking for you. What should we tell her? Let her know I'm taking some time off and won't be back until next week. Stacy picked up our bill along with her bagel. She gave me a tight hug and said, Stay strong. If you need anything, just let me know. Our daughters, Julie and Kate, were both in their 3rd year at the University of Connecticut. Julie was born 9 months before Kate and skipped 4th grade, so they graduated high school together. Julie was studying electrical engineering like me, while Kate was majoring in chemistry with plans for a medical career. I managed to get hold of Kate earlier, asking her and Julie to meet me later in the day without contacting their mom until we talked. Dad, what's going on? Mom's been calling like crazy and she must know we're avoiding her. I hugged Julie and kissed Kate's cheek, leading them to a quiet spot in Yukon Student Union. You don't look so good, Dad, Julie remarked. I chuckled, realizing those were the same words my boss said earlier. Yeah, I've heard that before. Then it was Kate's turn. Just spill it, Dad. We're concerned. What's happening? I'd rehearsed what to say, but when the moment came, I couldn't find the words. Instead, the tears I'd been holding back since meeting with the private investigator burst out. Both girls leaped out of their seats and hugged me tightly, providing comfort until I could compose myself. I hate to break this to you, but I'm going to file for divorce from Mom. She's been having a long-term affair with a coworker, I told them. Julie began, But Dad, are you? Her words trailed off. Yes, sweetheart, I'm sure. I have evidence, I assured her. Julie looked stunned and Kate started to cry. Then Julie spoke up again. Dad, I need to see the proof. I know you wouldn't lie, but I need to see it. Earlier, I had picked out one of the less offensive photos from the investigator's report. I showed them a picture of their mom and Mike Brooks leaving a house their real estate firm was selling. They were kissing on the front porch. As they looked at the picture together, Julie began, Dad. Sweetheart, I interrupted. I have photos, videos, texts, and emails. I won't show you any of it, but I've seen them. They're terrible. Both girls were now in tears. Are you really going to divorce Mom? Kate asked through her sobs. At this point, I don't see any other choice. I know I haven't been a perfect husband or father, I admitted, waving off their objections. I continued, but I've always tried to do right by you. Sometimes I messed up, but never on purpose. I've given my all to this family. I don't have anything left to give, and it seems like Mom wants more. The girls listened intently as I spoke. I still love your mom, though not as much as I did 6 weeks ago when I first got suspicious. But I don't like her much anymore. I can't trust her, and I can't imagine ever trusting her again. And the worst part is, she's lost respect for me. She's been belittling and humiliating me in the worst ways, and she doesn't care. There was a brief silence, broken by Julie's ringing phone. We saw Mom on the screen. "Don't answer that," I told Julie. Before I could speak further, Julie grabbed her phone and answered angrily, "Sorry, Mom, but we're too busy consoling Dad who's heartbroken. If you need someone to talk to, call up your affair partner." Amy's hysterical shouts were audible as Julie ended the call. When the phone rang again immediately, Julie turned it off, and Katie did the same. "I'm sorry you're stuck in the middle of this mess. Your mom. Well, she's still your mom. She loves you, and you know it. Things might be tense between you and Mom for a while, but you still need to treat her with respect." As the girl started to object, I raised my hand. "I'm not asking you to forgive her for what she's done or the damage she's caused, but we all have to find a way to move forward." I looked at both of them and added, "She's your mom, flaws and all, just like you have to accept me." After leaving the Yukon campus, I stopped at a burger joint for some food and a much-needed craft beer, then headed over to my parents' house. I rarely visited unannounced, so as I sat in their driveway gathering my thoughts, I saw my parents' front door open. Dad stepped onto the front stoop, followed by Mom. They watched me from afar as I sat in my car gathering my courage. I got out of the car and began walking toward them. Dad and I met halfway and he pulled me into a tight bear hug. All the strength I tried to gather vanished, and I cried into Dad's shoulder without shame. "Your mom and I don't know what's happening, but the frantic calls from Amy let us know something's wrong. We were expecting you to show up tonight." After I explained Amy's affair with her coworker to my parents, Mom asked, "Do you think counseling could help you deal with this?" Mom's always hopeful. And she sees Amy almost like her own daughter. Tears welled up in her eyes as I shook my head and replied, "I don't want to see a therapist. I've treated Amy and the girls like royalty. I didn't do anything wrong and don't deserve how cruelly Amy's treated me."
"But you've had so many good years together."
With a sigh, I admitted, "You're right, Mom. We've had a great life until Amy and Amy alone wrecked it. This isn't a one-time mistake. It's a full-blown affair between two selfish married people who only care about themselves." Mom seemed to be searching for another solution. I think I shocked her when I said, "Why would you want me to be miserable living with a lying, cheating person? I'm not perfect, but don't I deserve better than being with someone unfaithful?" "Please, Chris," Mom pleaded. "Don't use those words to describe Amy, at least not in front of me. I'm just trying to make a point, Mom. Amy's taken everything I have to offer, but it's not enough. She's hurt and disrespected me. Do I not deserve better?" Dad interrupted, saying, "Cut your mom some slack. We're still trying to process this shock. You know we'll support whatever decision you make." After a pause, Dad added, "And understand, if possible, we'd like to maintain a relationship with Amy and her family. It might not be as strong as before, but I hope Amy's actions haven't ruined that possibility." As Dad finished, Mom's phone rang. She checked the screen and said, "It's Amy." After a moment's hesitation, Mom looked me in the eye and stated, "I won't ignore Amy's calls, and I won't deceive her. I'll never ask you to do that." Dad and I remained quiet as Mom picked up the phone. "Hello, Amy. He got here about 10 minutes ago and told us about your actions. I think he'll be staying here tonight. Amy, I'm sorry. Chris, Amy's coming over." "Don't worry about it, Mom. I'm going to head out. I'll give you a call tomorrow." Mom asked, "Where are you going?" "Stacy has a cottage at Cooper Lake. She's letting me stay there for now." "You'll have to talk to her eventually," Dad pointed out. "I will, but I'll do it when I'm ready, not when she wants. I'm just not prepared yet." "What should we say to Amy when she shows up?" Mom inquired. "I'd call her and let her know it's pointless to come over. Tell her I'm not ready to talk. I trust you won't lie, but I hope you won't tell her where I'm staying." Mom started crying. I walked over and hugged her tightly. Dad joined in, and the Harrington family comforted each other. My parents silently provided all the emotional support I needed. After officially initiating the divorce process with a visit to a highly recommended divorce lawyer, I went to my in-laws' house. Amy's car wasn't there, so I parked and approached the front door. "It's really bad, isn't it?" Those were Frank Wilson's first words as he opened the front door. "It's about as bad as it gets." Frank stood in the doorway, blocking my way, and asked, "Who cheated?" "She did." "Do you have proof?" Frank inquired. I nodded, and Frank exclaimed, "Dang!" then turned and headed to the kitchen, leaving the door ajar. Eileen, Amy's mom, was nervously sitting at the kitchen table. She looked up as I entered and gestured toward the coffee maker, saying, "Fresh coffee's there." As I silently poured myself a cup, Frank retrieved a bottle of Jack from a cabinet. We both sat down, and Frank poured a generous amount of bourbon into his coffee, sliding the bottle my way. As I added some liquid courage to my cup, Frank asked, "Can I see the evidence?" Looking down at the table, I replied, "I can show you the written report, but I won't share the photos or videos." When he cursed again and met his eyes, I continued, "But Frank, I'm begging you, please don't ask to see the photos. No father should ever have to see his daughter in those situations." It was painful to witness, but Frank visibly deflated in front of Eileen and me. Eileen interjected, "Is there any chance your marriage can be saved?" "I met with a lawyer this morning. He'll have the paperwork ready by early next week, and we'll file it with the court on Wednesday. The lawyer will contact Amy using her cell number. She can choose to pick up the paperwork at his office, or we can serve her officially." "I can't believe you're giving up on your marriage so easily," Eileen burst out angrily. "I'm not giving up, Eileen. Amy made that decision when she chose to cheat on me." "But it happened just once," Eileen yelled. I took 3 deep breaths to calm down and briefly regretted adding bourbon into my coffee. It wasn't just once. Only Amy and her affair partner know how many times they've met, but it's been going on for months. We sat in silence for a moment before I continued. "This is your second marriage, just like mine. Both of your first marriages ended because of infidelity." Frank quickly interjected, "But those marriages were new. You've been married for 25 years. Doesn't that count for something?" "Love, trust, and respect, Frank. You've said those words to me countless times. A marriage needs all 3. I don't trust Amy, and she doesn't respect me." Eileen asked, "Will you treat Amy fairly in the divorce?" "I have to follow the divorce laws, but I won't make it harder on Amy or our family than necessary." "What about the girls?" Frank inquired. "I talked to them yesterday on campus. They know about the divorce and the reason. They're upset with Amy, like everyone else. It might take time, but they'll understand, I promise." "I hope you don't mind me asking." "Feel free to ask anything. I'm divorcing Amy, not you and Frank. I hope we can still have a friendship." Tears streamed down Eileen's face as she pleaded, "Please talk to Amy." "I will, I promise, but not today, and probably not for a few days. But I will talk to her." Mary Beth Johnston has been friends with Amy for a long time. They could have been closer, but I've always been cautious of Mary Beth and her husband Phil since we first met. Mary Beth and Phil have an open marriage. While they didn't actively recruit others into their lifestyle, they weren't secretive about it either. They often shared stories about their activities over the years. Amy's interest in swapping parties and casual relationships made me uncomfortable, but I trusted my wife completely. "I can't believe how you're treating Amy." "Yes, she messed up big time, but she's sorry. You need to move on and stop acting foolish. If you want to mess around, go ahead, but don't do anything reckless." That's how Mary Beth started the conversation when she sat down across from me at Dunkin' Donuts. "I'm not going to do anything reckless, I promise." Mary Beth looked skeptical and said, "Amy thinks you're planning to get a divorce." "I am getting a divorce. Papers will be filed Wednesday. It's not foolish, it's what people do when they want to leave a cheating spouse." Before Mary Beth could say more, I asked, "You've known me almost as long as Amy has. I've known about your open marriage the whole time. Have I ever given any indication I'd be okay with infidelity?" Mary Beth was shocked and muttered, "This is a nightmare." "It's a nightmare for Amy, me, our kids, and everyone else, Mary Beth. It's about to become your nightmare too." Angry again, Mary Beth snapped, "Of course it's a nightmare for Phil and me. We've been friends for years." I smirked at Mary Beth, knowing my warning went right over her head. "What?" she asked, followed by an agitated, "What?" "I've had a private investigator looking into Amy's suspicious behavior," I revealed. Staying assertive, Mary Beth retorted, "Yeah? So what?" "He caught her cheating. The PI's report includes all the text messages between you and Amy for the past 6 months," I continued. Mary Beth tried to process this when I dropped the bomb. "I know Mike was part of your swapping group before you got married. You even told Amy he is a Big Johnson. When you found out he was working with Amy, you pushed her to go for it. Amy's kept you updated on their dates. I know every detail, you witch." Before Mary Beth could speak, I cut in. "Every action has consequences. Amy's cheating leads to divorce. Your consequences won't be as severe, but I'll make sure to mess with your lives." "How will you do that?" she demanded. With a smile, I answered, "Glad you asked." I pulled out a folded paper from my back pocket, unfolded it, and I said, "I'm going to send this email out to a few people that you and Phil know. Subject: Mary Beth and Phil Johnston ruined my marriage, friends. I'm Chris Harrington. I've been married to Amy for almost 25 years. Except for the last few months, our marriage seemed perfect, at least to me. Due to the direct impact of Mary Beth and Phil Johnston's open marriage, my wife has cheated on me, and I am filing for divorce. After 25 years of marriage went down the drain, I'm sending this email as a cautionary tale to prevent other marriages from being ruined by Mary Beth and Phil's casual attitude toward faithfulness. My wife had an affair with a swapping friend of Phil and Mary Beth. Mary Beth encouraged the affair, telling my wife Amy she'd never forget it. Mary Beth was right. My wife will never forget her affair, as it's destroyed our marriage and family. Whether you're connected to the Johnston personally, professionally, or socially, be aware of their complete disregard for marriage vows and their readiness to wreck your own marriage. Maybe if I'd been more careful in choosing our friends, Amy and I wouldn't be headed for divorce. Best regards, Chris Harrington. Mary Beth threatened, "We'll sue you if you send this to anyone." I chuckled and replied, "My lawyer checked out the email and the PI report's text messages. He said everything in the email is true." "Who are you sending it to?" "I've got emails for all the teachers and administrators in your school district, plus 38 folks at Phil's company. There are over 300 people there, but the email will probably spread. Members of your country club and church will see it too, along with some groups you and Phil are involved in." Mary Beth sat there stunned. I handed her a copy saying, "You can show Phil exactly what's going out. Have a great life, you awful person." As part of the PI report, I learned Lucy Brooks, married to that jerk Michael Brooks, took her kids to Willowbrook Park every Saturday. At the park, she and her kids hung out with a regular group of moms and kids. "Lucy," I greeted. "Chris, haven't seen you since the company holiday party. What brings you here?" Just wanted to catch up, Lucy." 7 moms were eyeing us. I said, "This isn't a random run-in. Can we chat alone for a bit?" Lucy agreed enthusiastically, saying, "Sure, absolutely," but soon she realized I wasn't sharing her cheerful mood. She questioned, "Chris, is everything?" Her voice trailed off as understanding dawned on her face. Lucy went visibly pale. Her friends, noticing her change in demeanor, looked either concerned for Lucy or upset that I had caused her distress. "Are you okay?" asked the plump blonde beside her. Lucy didn't respond right away, only snapping out of her trance when another mom demanded, "What's happening?" "I'm okay, really." "Then to me, I think we should talk privately." "That would be best." A slim, attractive redhead stood up, shooting angry looks between Lucy and me. "Chris, this is my protective cousin, Aggie. Aggie, meet Chris Harrington. He's married to someone who works with Mike. I think he wants to chat about the women's intuition stuff you believe I've been imagining, ladies." "Aggie, how about Lucy and I head to the picnic table under the tree?" I gestured to a spot nearby. "We can have some privacy there, but still be close by." Lucy stared at the ground for a moment, tears silently streaming down her face as she rose to her feet. Aggie rushed to her side, embracing her tightly as they both cried. When they pulled apart, Aggie's anger softened to sadness as she saw my own tears. I told Aggie, "I'm not just delivering bad news. I'm caught in the middle of this mess with your cousin." Walking alongside Lucy, she halted after a few steps, turned to Aggie and said, Can you take the kids home with you?" Replied, "Sure thing, Lucy. And if necessary, can they stay over for the weekend?" Gave a sad smile and nodded. Seated across from each other at the picnic table, I inquired, "How long have you been aware of this?" Lucy sighed. "Unfortunately, this isn't new territory for me. We tied the knot a bit later than most, and soon after we started a family. After our second child, Mike got a vasectomy. His first affair cropped up within 6 months. The second followed a year after our first confrontation. Now this is the third strike. I've had a hunch something was off for about a month. I'm wrestling with the decision to divorce Amy. I know it's inevitable, but I keep doubting myself. Can you shed some light on why you stayed with Mike after his first 2 affairs?" "It was mostly for the kids. Well, entirely for them, really. I grew up with divorced parents, a bitter mom, and a dad I saw once a week. I didn't want that for my own kids. I still don't, but it seems like that's where we're headed. Fortunately, I have a strong support network nearby, so I'll have plenty of help." I had a feeling Lucy would answer that way, so I nodded in agreement. "Can you tell me why Mike cheats?" I inquired. Lucy nodded in response. "He enjoys the excitement of corrupting good girls." I was pretty innocent about closeness. Mike was my lover and teacher. He set rules and rewarded me when I followed them. I liked being his naughty partner, but only in a loving, faithful marriage. "Do you have any evidence?" Lucy asked. Handing her a thick envelope, I replied, "I suggest giving this to your lawyer and avoiding looking at it. Most of Mike and Amy's conversations are hurtful. There's nothing there except pain." "What made you suspicious of Amy?" Lucy inquired. I chuckled, saying, "It seems Mike had similar expectations for Amy. Like a loyal pup, she learned the tricks and shared them with me. I've decided to stay at Aggie's place for the weekend while we've been talking. I know it's a big ask, but could you drive me home so I can pack for a few days?" Before I could respond, Lucy warned, "Mike will be there. I'm not worried about your lousy husband. I'm happy to take you home," I assured her. After sorting out everything with Aggie, Lucy came back to me, and we headed to my car. The drive to her house was pretty quiet. When we reached her street, she pointed to an SUV parked on the side and told me to stop there. Following her instructions, I parked next to the truck and watched as Lucy signaled to the driver. Then she gestured ahead and told me her house was the white colonial 5 houses down on the left. As I pulled into the driveway, the SUV followed behind me. Mike was out in the front yard, mowing the lawn. Things unfolded quickly. Mike waved to Lucy as she got out of my car. 2 women swiftly exited the SUV, flanking Lucy and guiding her to the front door. A big man trailed behind the women, standing guard by the entrance after they went inside. Meanwhile, an older man emerged from the SUV just as I stepped out of my car. He approached me with a handshake and introduced himself. "I'm Larry Green. Lucy is my daughter." I leaned against the front of my car, hands on the hood, watching as Mike approached. Chris Harrington. What's Lucy doing with you?" Mike looked shaken, his face pale. "I ran into her at the park this morning. I had some important stuff to share with her from my private investigator." Before Mike could say anything, Larry chimed in. "You scum, Mike. You've just lost the only good part of your sorry life." "This is all garbage," Mike yelled, then rushed toward the front door, shouting, "Stay out of my way. Georgie!" I figured Georgie was the big guy sitting on the steps. He didn't budge until Mike tried to pass. Then he swiftly got up, pushed Mike back, and sent him tumbling to the ground. Larry gave me a questioning look. "It looked like Mike slipped," I said. Larry nodded. "Yep, sure. Did." Mike struggled to get up, eventually turning to me. He shouted, "It's all your wife's fault. She came after me. Everyone knows she's just a public property."
I won't argue with you there, Mike.
"Amy's a witch, but she's not my problem anymore," I chuckled sadly, trying to hide my emotions. Just then, Larry put his hand on my shoulder, giving me a boost. "You and Mike are a match made in hell. You both know each other's game. How do you think that'll play out?" "I don't want anything to do with her," Mike spat. "Well, lucky for her then. She's got enough problems without dealing with a jerk like you," I retorted. I shook hands with Larry and said, "This guy isn't worth my time. I'm out. Take care of Lucy. She's a great woman." It had been 2 weeks. Amy got served, and her lawyer was talking with mine. Life felt like a bleak routine. During lunch, I checked my voicemail and heard from my mother-in-law. "Hey Chris, it's Eileen. Just reminding you about the promise you made to talk with Amy. It'd mean a lot if you could give her a call. Thanks. Love you." Grinding my teeth, I reluctantly dialed my home number, knowing Amy was at work. I left this message. "Amy, it's Chris. I'm staying at Stacy's family lake house. If you're up for it, swing by on Saturday for lunch. I'll make sandwiches. We can chat. Meet me at the backyard picnic table at noon. Thanks for coming out here, Chris." "This lunch setup looks great. Thanks," Amy said, sitting across from me at the picnic table by the lake. Even without her usual radiance, Amy still looked good after all these years. "It's nice to see you, Amy." "Appreciate you making the drive," I replied. Amy glanced around and said, "It's so serene here." I agree. Initially, I was considering moving into a downtown condo near the office, but lately, I've been eyeing lakefront properties around here, I shared. My unintended comment hit Amy hard, and I could see the devastation in her eyes right away. "Amy, I started, but she cut me off with a wave of her hand. Tears welled up as she said, "No need to apologize. I'm just being overly sensitive." Looking away from the table, Amy continued, "I'm so scared." Her words hung heavy in the air as she collected herself. "I've been scared before, many times. Work challenges, raising our wonderful daughters, they've all terrified me, but I always had you by my side. We were a team, and I knew together we could tackle anything," she reflected, smiling softly. I agreed. "We did a good job, didn't we?" We shared a peaceful moment, eating our lunch. I topped off Amy's wine glass and poured myself another beer. "I've started seeing a therapist," Amy sighed. "Well, shrink isn't fair. Dr. Popper has been great, helping me navigate the end of our marriage and find my way forward solo." "I'm glad to hear that, Amy. I hope it helps you find the closure you need," I replied. "I've told myself over and over not to ask you about reconciliation. Everyone says it's not possible, but I have to ask. Is there any chance you can forgive me and we can try again?" Amy's voice trembled with hope. I took a deep breath and downed a swig of beer. "That's 2 separate questions, Amy. I've been wrestling with the forgiveness part since we agreed to meet today. I've made a commitment to myself to try," I admitted. After some thought, I continued, "It's going to be a process, and I'm not sure if it's achievable, but I'm going to give it a shot. But let me be clear, if I do forgive you, it's not primarily for your sake, but for the girls, our family, and myself." Finishing off the rest of my beer, I added, "We'll still be in each other's lives enough that I don't want to carry around any bitterness. But Amy, the divorce will proceed, and we won't be getting back together." Amy cried and nodded in understanding. She asked, "Can I reach out if I need support, if I need someone to talk to?" Though I wanted to shout, I kept calm, grabbed another beer from the cooler and filled my glass. Once I composed myself, I proposed, "How about a compromise? Until the divorce is final, let's handle things through our lawyers. Afterward, I'll be open to your calls, except for emergencies." 7 months later, our divorce was finalized. It was my first night in my new lakeside home, and I sat on the back deck, contemplating whether to crack open a couple of high-alcohol craft beers from the cooler or dive straight into the bourbon on the table before me when my phone buzzed. Seeing Amy's name, I answered with a smile. "Hey, Amy. I'm really down and could use someone to talk to," she said with sadness in her voice. 5 years later, things were looking up. One morning, I noticed the sky seemed bluer and the birds sounded cheerier. Life was improving. Stacy was proven right. She moved to our company's main office in Dallas, where she's now the executive VP of sales and marketing. Despite staying single, she's seen her kids grow up. After a glass or two of wine, she admits to enjoying the occasional thrill of a one-night stand. Julie graduated college with top honors and now works as an engineer for a defense contractor on the West Coast. She's in a somewhat serious relationship and pursuing her master's degree part-time. Julie maintains a strong bond with both Amy and me, chatting with us weekly. We affectionately call Kate the Mole because of her lack of a social life. After college, she worked for a pharmaceutical company for a couple of years before getting into Johns Hopkins Medical School. Engaged to another med student, they're both devoted to their studies. While I reach out to Kate weekly, she seldom initiates contact, preferring to focus on her studies. My parents are surprisingly healthy for their age. They still reside in Hartford, Connecticut, but escape the harsh winters by spending time in a small condo in Clearwater, Florida. While Mom enjoys monthly lunches with Amy, Dad rarely joins. Frank and Eileen are also doing fine despite minor health concerns. They alternate hosting weekly dinners with my parents, maintaining close ties. Mary Beth and Phil relocated to the Midwest a year after our divorce, with Mike following 6 months later. Good riddance to them all. Lucy and her kids are thriving. Though it took her a while to start dating again, she's been quite popular among eligible suitors. Setting high standards, she eventually found Mr. Right, and they recently celebrated their first anniversary. Judging by their constant smiles, they still feel like newlyweds. Amy appears to be content as well. While her relationship with Kate remains strained, her other connections have healed. She's been seeing a man for 6 months, and the last time we spoke, she mentioned he might be the one. I'm hopeful for her happiness. As for me, things are going smoothly. I stepped into Stacy's role as division president after she moved to Dallas. My responsibilities are manageable and on track. 2 years post-divorce, I bumped into an old acquaintance, Lucy's cousin Aggie. We met at a mutual friend's daughter's graduation party and chatted a bit. Later, as the older crowd left, Aggie pulled me aside and said, during lunchtime, like most days, Aggie showed up at my office and locked the door behind her. I quickly wrapped up a call and joined her on the couch. As a man in his early 50s, my prowess isn't what it used to be. While I may have been more energetic in the past, now I can only offer a few drops. Sadly, the days of intense passion are behind me. Fortunately, Aggie doesn't seem to mind.